very special webinar that we're doing on eating now. Now, Prime Minister Modi gave a clarion call for to go vocal for local. And this evening, we have three brands who have done this for years now. From taking coffee grown in Araku Valley to Paris, from taking tea grown in Assam to over 100 countries in the world, and from taking idli, dosa, vada batter made here to countries in the Middle East and also the US. I'm very happy to welcome Manoj Kumar of Araku Coffee, Kausshal Dugarr of Teabox, and of course PC Musthafa, the founder of ID Fresh. So all three of you, thank you very much for joining us on this ET Now webinar. Before I ask you to start sharing your story, I just want to ask all of you how the pandemic has really changed business as we know it. A lot of online brands are talking about how the interest has actually gone up in the last month or so. So Manoj, let me start with you. How has COVID-19 really impacted Araku Coffee? Are there more people now perhaps buying coffee online?
So, first of all, I should clarify that we are so far only an online business in India.
Right.
We don't sell anywhere except one
Right.
gourmet store in Hyderabad, which I did because we know them and it's hometown, so we just kept, that's it. And we are very humbled by the extraordinary increase in the sales thanks to the COVID pandemic, because what happened is people took to online and that increased our traffic as well, number one. Number two, having said that, in the Hyderabad store, when we kept it post-lockdown, when we were allowed to keep, there was an embargo before that, coffee just disappeared from the shelves like in no time. So it's been interesting to know that, and it's been proven that good coffee is good for stress, because this time everybody went for it, looks like. And more seriously, our only hiccup was we had a time when courier agencies were not working, and that was a good 30 days. So that time we had zero sales. I mean, we just couldn't, except for the grocery that opened. So subject to that being possible, things are good. I think Indians are beginning to learn to buy online, which is very good for us. That's my answer. Thank you.
Right. Kaushal, how about you?
So Chandra, the entire lockdown period in a way made us go back to our roots. Many years ago, we started as digital first. And we looked at the entire lockdown, this pandemic, more as a supply side disruption rather than as a demand side. We had absolutely no challenges in terms of having that demand. In fact, in most categories of our products, May 2020 was significantly higher than May 2019. We also realized that while more people being at home, they naturally end up consuming more tea or more coffee in the case. And tea is very much part and parcel of someone's lifestyle. It's not a discretionary product. No matter what happens, you're going to consume your tea. Uh, we had some hiccups when the tea plantations were closed for a while in Darjeeling in Assam, which affected the production and hence, the quality of the production whenever they started. But fortunately for us, being at the source, literally hours away from the plantation, we were able to get the best teas pre-lockdown. And as soon as the lockdown opened up, we were able to get the best teas post that. Because during this time, you hardly had any buyers come from, say, US, UK, or the regular markets come and buy teas. And thirdly, we realized that, especially one of our categories, green tea, huge association towards immunity, towards, building strength against anything what's going on in the world. And that just flew off the shelves. So fortunately for us, we were in a right category, being a digitally first, things were not as bad as we thought it would have been.
I'm sure people are also having a lot of green tea, hoping that it will lead to some weight reduction, considering all of us are at home cooking all the time, trying out new things. But Mustafa, a lot of men have started sharing stories about how they are cooking. So have you seen the demand for idli, dosa, vada, batter really go up during this phase? And also some of your, ready to cook categories like your parota, Malabar parota, or your chapati. Some of those items seem to be flying off the shelf because people want to kind of hoard and use.
Thanks, Chandra. It's being nice to be part of an idli, dosa, vada, coffee, tea discussion. When you don't when you don't get coffee, you can manage with tea. But then when you don't get idli, the only option is dosa. So we will be lucky that we have idli and dosa, right? Coming back, I think it's been good learning for us. We have become smarter now. We have learned to do more with less. In fact, if you look at the revenue, we have been operating in around 30,000 outlets before the COVID. And during the COVID, because of the logistic issues, we cut down our distribution to around 10,000 outlets. And we, from a 12 SKUs that we were operating, we cut it down to 4 SKUs. And even with that, we had a 20% growth month on month, right? Again, from a profitability perspective, I think our profitability went up by almost 22% compared to the pre-COVID. So it's been good learning, and I think post-COVID as well, we will become smarter.
Right. All three of you have such amazing stories about how we have taken local brands, products that people identify it, it's become household names in India, and then you've taken it to the world on a global scale. So I just want each of you to kind of tell me about your story about how you thought local and went global. And Manoj, in your case, there's also such a huge societal impact because this is coffee grown by the tribal community in Araku Valley. You worked closely with the Adivasis to ensure that they get a good price for the crop they grow. And you're kind of selling this in Paris, and you won an award, for the best coffee bean, which is a global recognition. So take us through this journey of how you thought local and went global.
So at one level, I will say, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I didn't go to Araku to create the world's best coffee. I went there 20 years ago because there was this Naxal movement, which was ensuring there is no development happening. And people used to tell that you cannot go in a white car or wearing a white shirt because they might blow it up. It was that kind of animosity. Mobile towers were broken, etc. So at the same time, I was also very fascinated by the fact that this is Eastern Ghats and this is part of the forest region, but the forests were disappearing. And this was apparently one reason why the farmers or the tribals were actually going to be supportive of this Naxal movement, etc. So our work was trying to do developmental work, trying to ensure maternal mortality is reduced, etc. That's how we went. But when we went there and I spent time, I discovered that this was a coffee growing region during the British time in 1900. And as you drive through that region, you will find only coffee estates of the government. And then we started speaking to the Coffee Board. From the beginning, they have been a huge supporter of ours, Coffee Board of India and the Tribal Development Agency there. And we realized that if we can create coffee estates for these tribals, this would shift them from being forest dependent, forest sort of, dwellers to actually estate owners. The transition would be fascinating. And that's how we started. But the real economics was very depressing at that time. In simple terms, we discovered that given the enormity of the region and the small land holdings with no soil, it was a semi-wasteland, a kilogram of coffee to produce would have cost me something like 600 rupees. And the market price for coffee in Kushal Nagar in Coorg at that time would have been 80, 90 rupees. So that tells the economics. You had to be absolutely stupid to grow coffee in Araku and hope to make a business out of it. But when we started doing it, the idea was maybe we can do as a fair trade certified organic coffee. and get a premium and try to do B2B exports, because I realized that with coffee, we had an opportunity to recreate a forest, which was an exciting idea. But truly, way back 10 years ago, I realized that this can happen only if I could attract international coffee experts to come and teach us the tricks of the trade. So apart from Coffee Board, apart from the government support and Indian agronomists who knew regenerative organic agriculture and forest agriculture, we have a good team from the beginning. I started importing talent to come and be with us, particularly Japan, Korea, France. And they were fascinated by this transformation effort we are planning to do. And they taught me that you have nothing to lose attempting to make the world's best coffee. So the focus was, if you want a very remote region of India to create a brand, the choice was very simple. You have to create the world's best. So the lady you see on picture, for instance, is someone who was for 13 years the chair of coffee of Oscars of Coffee. She's Sherry Jones from Portland. And she, is now full-time with us as the chief advisor on how to express this coffee with customers, in terms of how to create roasters, create baristas of international talent. That's why she's here. Early on, she was not part of this journey. We were looking at the main kernel of the idea that we got was, unless you create a world-class product, we cannot create a value proposition for tribals. So the journey was curating, my favorite analogy is the Birkin bag the Hermes company makes. It's like one bag, 1 year, one artisan. So literally almost like that, we used to work with one micro estate producing just one bag of coffee and to sell it at an exorbitant price. So that was the journey, and it was all about quality. And the number of nudges, if I had an American professor friend by now, we would have had 2 business books, because I don't get the time to write these things, but they were enormous tricks here to do, because these tribals were fundamentally lazy and fundamentally believed that their idea is to just relax in life, not to work hard. So to tell them to do world-class coffee was tough. Second, they believed in such deep-rooted socialism. They said they didn't like the idea of competing their estate with their neighbors, and they said both should get the same price irrespective of quality. So numerous such challenges we had to overcome to get them to do here. I'm just painting to you that even if your conditions are so extreme, you still can create a global brand from this country, because especially if it's F&B, because we are such a blessed sort of space in terms of sunlight, rainfall, soil, people, and nuances of culture and terroir. This coffee is a terroir coffee. We created that entire region to be converted like the Burgundy or Bordeaux region of France, using experts from France. So if you drink my coffee from one village, it will taste different from another village. But this had to be classified agronomically by the tribals and by the French Institute. So all this is possible. So my appeal is not to tell extraordinary things that we did, because there were so many, but it was more about, and challenging or inspiring and requesting youngsters in India to go to those places where development has not happened in India, just create world-class brands. They're sitting to be discovered. That's how I will put my opening salvo, and I'll stop to hear my amazing 2 colleagues to speak.
That's an amazing opening, Manoj, and a very good inspiring message for youngsters as well to go after these lesser known. And as you said, there's a huge opportunity as far as F&B is concerned.
Absolutely.
But Kaushal, Manoj called himself an accidental entrepreneur, but you come from a family that was traditionally in the tea business, and you perhaps decided that we have to disrupt the model as it was happening. So take us through your journey. Teabox now sells in over 100 countries worldwide, the tea that's made in Darjeeling and Nilgiris and Assam.
So, Chandra, like coffee, tea is a legacy of the British in many ways. And after spending many years outside, when I came back to India, I relooked at the tea industry and I realized that even though it's a 200-year-old industry, things pretty much still happen the way the Britishers left us. Many people might not know, but between the producer or the plantation where the tea is produced and the end consumer, there are actually 5 to 7 middlemen. So tea is sold at an auction from where an exporter picks it up, then sells it to an importer, wholesaler, retailer, and consumer. By the time you get your tea, say you're sitting in New York, London, Hong Kong, Singapore, not only is it months old, literally 6 to 12 months, the cost of tea increases. But most importantly, tea is also an agriculture product. You will never have your fruits and vegetables more than 2 to 3 days old. But people were used to having, because of old supply chains, having teas months, if not years old. So we said very simply, we'll just do one thing. We'll provide the world's freshest teas, or rather freshest teas from India to the world. We'll disrupt the entire supply chain. We'll go direct from the source to the consumer. And in the process, we'll reduce 6 to 12 months to literally a week. But most importantly, give you a fresh product. Because if you were to consume a fresh tea vis-a-vis, say a tea 6 to 12 months old, it's a difference of 101. It's a difference of day and night. The other thing we realized that, and especially why the ambition to create, global brand, because tea in India, India produces 25% of the world's tea production. Uh, Even after producing so much, not a single brand has come from India on a global level. And
Right.
because of the lack of brand, there's hardly any value coming back to the source. Most of the tea workers, they unfortunately work on less than $3 a day. And in today's day and age, I don't think $3 goes away, goes too far. So our entire, vision behind creating Teabox was bring back value to the source, and through us be a effective channeler, so to speak, give back value to the source. Because this is one industry which employs, which is not many people might know. This tea industry is India's second largest employer of organized labor after Indian Railways. You have millions of people working here. A 10% increment in terms of their daily wages or value creation can lead to a significant improvement in terms of their day-to-day lives. And I think the last thing, just the ambition of creating a global brand in India, in an industry where my family has been operating for 100 years. So all of that put together, I think that was the entire reason of starting Teabox.
Right. Mustafa, you have a very interesting backstory. I read that you dropped out of school, then you went on to do your engineering and then your management from IMB. In fact, someone in IMB said that you're the youngest person to receive the Distinguished Alumnus Award. And then you decided to start up ID with 4 of your cousins because you felt that the quality of batter being sold then, wasn't up to the mark. So from then to now, take us through your journey. Would you also describe yourself as an accidental entrepreneur? And how important has branding been? Taking this local idli, dosa, vada batter and then selling it in the Middle East, in the US.
Chandra, my dad was a daily wage worker. I come from a very remote village in a beautiful place called Wayanad in Kerala.
So it's a rags to riches story, literally.
Yeah, my village is so remote that we had no electricity in my village, no roads in my village and stuff like that. And I started my first business at the age of 10 to support my dad, to meet both ends of the family. I then had this story of school dropout, going back and all of them. You just summarized, so I'm just skipping that for the time being. I then ended up doing engineering, right? Then worked with few MNCs in India, Middle East and Europe. Decided to come back to India with an objective of creating employment for smart kids from my village. Because there was a lot of smart boys and girls from my village who were not able to get a good career break in their life. So we thought I should do something about it. And then ended up doing my MBA from IIM Bangalore. And during that same time, I used to chat with my friends, my cousins, who used to be my childhood friends as well. They were running a small-time Kirana store in a place called Indiranagar in Bangalore. It was a very small setup. This store had idli dosa batter supplier who was supplying idli dosa batter in a plain pouch with a rubber band on the top. You will still see in some part of Chennai and Mumbai. had a sticker outside. Sometimes a sticker would be inside as well. Right? There are all sort of quality issues, hygiene compliance and service issues. My cousins tried to fix the issue with the vendor multiple times. It didn't work out. And that's when we thought, why don't we try to do it ourselves? And that's how we started in a very small setup. We started in a 50 square feet area of a kitchen with an investment of 50,000 rupees. All what we had 50,000 rupees. With that money, we bought one grinder, one mixer, one searing machine, one weighing scale, and a second-hand scooty. Our job was to go to market every day, buy rice and dal, come back, then clean it, wash, grind, soak it, grind it, mix it, ferment it, pack it, and then load it on the second-hand scooty, go to the market ourselves and sell it ourselves. It was a back-breaking work. Our shirt would be soft as sweat. It took us almost 9 months to get 20 customers.
Wow.
It took us 9 months to sell 100 packets. But we didn't give up. We really enjoyed it. We were pretty confident about this business opportunity. That is the past. Today, in fact, last month, on a daily basis, we ended up serving more than 2 million idlis every single day.
Wow.
Right. That's the story. Quick summary. Coming back, I don't think it was accidental. Isn't it a better idea to get into idli business when idli business is the most sustainable business in the world? Because whenever my grandfather could afford to eat a breakfast, he will eat idli. I love eating idli every day. And then I want my grandson to eat idli in future. There is no sustainable business. There is no better sustainable business than idli business in the world. So that's what we decided to take it across India and outside India as well. We started it in 2005-6 time, and we were a small business for almost 6-7 years. Last 5-6 years, we started growing and going to different places, going to different markets. Today, we are there in around 30,000 outlets. We are a team of 2,000 people spread across 45 cities in India and Middle East, UAE, and GCC countries. We are soon starting operation in other markets.
Right. I was just going through some stats, and ID makes over 65,000 kg of idli dosa batter every day. Some 8.5 lakh of parotas and 5 lakh chapatis. I mean, this is the quantity you sell on a daily basis. So literally, feeding India and many other parts of the world. But Manoj,
if you can imagine the size of this idli business, Bangalore alone tuck in close to 2 crore idli a day, and that is equivalent to more than 100 Asian elephants.
I guess the Bangaloreans love our idli, sambar, chutney, and dosas and what have you. We are missing the darshanis, but at least we have ID to cook with at home. Manoj, how important is it to have the right backing to create a local brand that can go global? In your case, you were lucky to have the Nandi Foundation backing you. You had a board that had the likes of Anand Mahindra, Chris Krishnan, Satish Reddy of DRL. So would this have been possible? Can one see an Araku coffee in Paris? An entrepreneur, can he create a local brand and take it global without the right board or without the right investors?
So I will say that, of course, it's absolutely amazing to have investors early on in your journey and the likes that you mentioned. But it's very important to say that investors of this caliber are especially useful because they encourage you to have the audacity to dream. I think most of us are scared of dreaming big. So when I was doing 600 rupees a kilo cost of production to make 1 kilogram of coffee to sell at 60 rupees, it was them who would come and say, in fact, Satish Reddy's father, Dr. Anji Reddy and Anand used to sit with me and say, if this economics has to change, then you should be able to sell coffee at 6,000 rupees a kilo. And if you have to sell at 6,000 rupees a kilo, it probably has to be the best coffee in the world. And then it has to be ideally abroad, so
Because
to even
I
allow
cannot
you to be.
imagine people in India spending 6,000 rupees for a kilo of coffee. I mean, do you find the market here?
So I'm coming to that in a moment. But what is second thing is not just the investors and this audacity alone, but it is then what is going to be an inspiring global brand from India, and what will represent that definition. Is it going to be that we'll be the fastest to get valuation of 1 billion? Is it that it's the fastest that will reach 1 billion turnover? We had so many metrics. So we ended up creating 3 tough metrics, which will allow people to forgive us if we. One was we had to ensure that every farmer is profitable. We will not sell otherwise. So which means I have 10,000 farmers. Each of them have to be profitable every time they sell me coffee. That was one condition. Second, the coffee had to be world class. So we put it through world jury and they have to get a score of 90 plus out of 100. And third, we were obsessed. We will do regenerative agriculture, which is basically organic, but also biodiversity. So to show ecology, quality, and then profits was the real challenge. And we felt that's what's going to make it an inspirational global brand. Especially, I don't have the advantage of tea or the ubiquitous taste palette of Idli. If I said coffee outside India, people didn't accept it. We were still having some image of tea, to be honest, not about coffee. Coffee was Colombia, coffee was Brazil, wherever else, Africa. So before we took to Paris, we first got the high-end coffee roasters in Japan to start coming and accept. When we were sold at Kyoto for a high price, they accepted it will work. So I think it is important to say that you need people who will back you in terms of the authenticity of your dream. If it is there, we need people who will support you. That's very important. I believe we live in a time where investors will come to the great idea and support you. But to get the kind of backing and mentoring and to allow you to dare to dream, that's tough. And I think that I was extremely blessed. Plus, to get 10,000 farmers who eventually agreed to chase the same dream. That's also not easy because we cover the entire value chain. We don't, like Kushal's middleman story. I mean, mine is that they grow and they're right till the end. The only other point I want to say is, which a board like this helps, they did not stick me to just believe on everything being local. Just as the experts for coffee came from abroad, the initial designing of our accessories were done by a Norwegian firm. Now we are looking at the next set of design from Indian firms because we believe now product design also India has come up a big way in the last few years. So these kind of a global, what I call a sourcing of talent to exploit the underexploited tribal region and then take it to really niche, bourgeois markets like Paris and Kyoto. That needed, I think, some people to come and tell Manoj, go there, it'll happen. We are behind you. That helped big time.
Right. Kaushal, if I look at Teabox, you had Naxal, which is one of India's most prominent investors, but then your bigger brand ambassador was Ratan Tata himself, who was not only your customer, but also your investor. What kind of difference did that make to you as a brand? And more importantly, for Indian brands going global, is there a bias towards it being a premium brand? Does it have to be a premium brand, something very niche for it to go global?
So look, Chandra, we are blessed to have Mr. Tata. Just a small correction, he's actually a coffee man. He's not so much a tea person. So
when your daughter,
yes,
so hi to her.
So when I met him in person, I said, I really wish going forward you'll have tea. The only tea you'll have is ours. He said, young man, sorry to break your bubble, but I only drink coffee. So I thought I lost the deal, but fortunately he saw.
That must be music to Manoj's ears.
I'm listening. I'm listening. Yeah.
Fortunately, but I think he saw something much larger. So our entire journey from a brand building and having the support of folks like Prashant from Naxal has been very instrumental. Before even getting to Bangalore, we were a two-member team. When I say two-member, it was me, it was my wife who is the co-founder, and we were pretty much doing everything in-house. Be it in terms of I used to wake up at 4:30, go to the gardens by 6, do the tasting, come back by 1 o'clock, get the teas of that particular day, and then really get to packing all the teas or responding to all customer emails and then shipping things, and at the end of the day just making sure everything was working fine. And we realized very quickly that tea as a brand, India already relates to it very, 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 very closely, because India is known for tea and spices. So and given that we produce some of the best teas, so why not create a brand out of it? Because if you look at Indian teas, they're nowhere on the global map. Ceylon teas are considered slightly better known, but India, especially Darjeeling, has the champagne of teas. So we went direct for a while to the customers, and it was pretty much bootstrapped, from whatever savings we had. In fact, my dad himself thought that I had lost it. He said, from being a corporate finance guy to sitting in front of a computer whole day, I don't even know what he's doing. Only when Axel came on board as an investor, he realized if someone else is putting money in my Marwadi son's business, there must be something good he must be doing. And having Mr. Tata was, I think, a big validation, because Tata itself they own the world's second largest tea company, Tata Global Beverages, which is now Tata Consumer Products, and obviously he's very familiar with the industry. So having someone on board like him was a great validation, and so was a bigger validation when a couple of our customers came on board as investor. Not many people know that one of the founders, or the founder of about a $150 billion private equity firm called Oak Hill Capital, is a gentleman called Robert Bass. Heard about us in New York Times, started ordering from us, and fortunately, even though he's in Texas, he's a tea guy. Started ordering from us for about 6 months, tried us from all permutation combinations, eventually realized, I'm doing something worthwhile and he loves the product, came on board. So having folks like this, like Manoj said, it kind of gives you a very high level perspective, which sometimes we on the ground don't have. And that goes very big way from a brand building perspective. And just to add on the part of premium products and premium brands, we sold last year, India's most expensive tea at 2 lakh rupees a kilo. And in fact, 35% of those teas were sold in India. So we clearly felt that, premium brand building is not just, valid for outside India, it's valid for India as well, as long as you're able to communicate clearly your value proposition. And it's not just the product, it's the experience, it's the packaging, it's the entire story. If all of that is able to come through, people are willing to give you good prices, because there is also a lot of cost involved in doing all of that.
Kaushal,
The groups.
please give us more details on people in India who are buying 1 kilo of tea for rupees 2 lakh. I mean,
No, since you asked, I'll just tell you.
are these people entrepreneurs? Are they from the south, from the north, from the east, from the west?
So when we had our store at Mumbai airport, we had this lawyer from a place, from everyone would know, or from Nagpur. He's not from Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, one of the tier 1 cities. Every month he would come to Bombay for client meetings, and he was the one regularly he would spend half an hour at our store and post that now on our website. His average order used to be around close to 25,000 rupees. So there are enough connoisseurs of tea in and around India. And these are not so-called the tier 1 guys. We have, a doctor from Jodhpur as well. And I looked him up on LinkedIn. He's a consultant ENT surgeon. I didn't know, someone from Jodhpur would be a hardcore tea customer, but there are lots of people like that in India. All we have to do is find them.
Right. Musthafa, we heard Manoj talking about investors, Kaushal also talking about how that played a role. But I want to learn more about your younger years. How did that make you a resilient entrepreneur? Because you told me that you came from a very remote village in Kerala. Your father was a daily wage worker, and despite that, you dreamed big and you kept at it, despite it taking a long time for you to find your first set of customers. So, did your childhood, in a sense, make you more resilient as an entrepreneur? As we speak, we're getting a lot of questions. So once I finish with this, perhaps I'll start taking some questions. Musthafa.
Sure. So answer is yes. It did. I think I learned a lot from my dad and my mom. It has been, they have been inspiration for me throughout my life. Coming back on your question on how did I manage the initial situation, we started with very small money, and we started making profit from day one. First month we made a profit of 450 rupees, and we still continue to make profit even today. And few things that I have learned during my this is sell it on cash on delivery. You may not make too much of profit per transaction, but better avoid credit so that you can focus on the business rather than focusing on collection. So we focused mainly on cash on delivery transactions. We ensured cash flow is positive from day one. We ensure that we are profitable from day one. And from a CapEx perspective, we try to build less CapEx business model or zero CapEx business model throughout our supply chain. And even if you look at inventory, we work on a zero inventory model. As Kaushal was saying, he was talking about it on an average, it takes around 2 months or 3 months of inventory for a traditional business. We work with a 6-day inventory, not more than that. And in the entire supply chain, we work with a zero inventory business model. Now, one interesting thing, we don't pay interest, we don't take interest. We don't have any loan. Even today, we are a zero debt company. We don't touch interest. So the model has been, initially, we started with our seed funding, and then we got our families and friends to invest and believe in this idea. And it took us almost 8 years to get an investor. And once we got the investor, but by the way, we were able to manage situation because we were profitable and cash flow positive. And when we got the investment in 2014, we then scaled up and expanded in other cities and other markets, and even other countries. For example, we went to Dubai after that. So overall, initially, my learning is you actually don't need funding to businesses, and that's the reality. If you get your business right, you don't need funding. Many times what we end up doing is we make a mistake of building business for investors. We should learn to build business for consumers, customers, and they will pay you money to run the business. You may not actually need investors to some great extent. And beyond that point, you might need investors. For example, in my case, since I had to go for a exponential growth from one city to a 45 city, from 20 vehicles to 400 vehicles, that time I needed investment. Otherwise, I would have been able to manage with my own money. Coming back, what I've learned from, dealing with investors, a few learnings from my side. Don't just, more of this is more like a marriage, right? Getting an investor is like getting married. You need to find the right partner. Don't end up choosing the investor just for the dowry, just for the money, right? Choose the right person who are aligned with your value system, who can add value in your business, who can help you to grow this business, and who can be a sounding box for you. And overall, I believe I've been very lucky to get people like Azim Premji on board to take Idli business to the world.
Does Mr. Premji enjoy Idlis, Musthafa? Any personal insight that you can share?
I hope so. We definitely enjoy the coffee because we deliver some coffee for you. We also have filter coffee, by the way.
He enjoys filter coffee?
Yeah.
So maybe he will be using the ID filter coffee precautions that you sell. But what's the new product that we can expect? I mean, you've expanded to parotas and chapatis and multi-grains and
maybe I can give,
chutneys.
I will have to give a quick yarn about it. Role of an entrepreneur is to identify, look around and identify customer problems and solve it using common sense. While solving for idli or dosa or vada, that's what we did. When you look around, sometimes you may not be able to identify customer problem. That time you look up. Then you get to see the humble coconut. Take the coconut out, innovate on that. Then you get something called ID Smart Seed Tender Coconut. That's our new product in the market. We just launched and is doing wonderfully well. We have launched Tender Coconut with something called KYC. KYC is not know your customer. KYC stands for know your coconut. Know your coconut before you. So we actually predict what is inside the coconut using technology and common sense, the amount of water, the amount of pulp, and the sweetness level of the coconut water inside without me opening the coconut, using simple science and common sense.
Right,
And that,
right.
and I believe those are the kind of products that we need to take outside the world from India.
Right. And I'm just going to start taking some of the questions. Manoj, one question to you. How did you handle the decrease in turnover during the pandemic? A, did you have a decrease in turnover? And B, how did you handle it?
No, so one of our strength is that every year we plant in Araku 500,000 new coffee saplings, and we plant additionally 1 million trees. So my production keeps going up every year. That's one. And every year I have to sell more coffee. So even before the pandemic, and unlike other products, my harvest typically concludes by March. I start harvesting from November. So at the end of March, by April, May is when I actually have the entire coffee for that year. I have still a couple of containers that I sell B2B to niche buyers abroad, which are high-end micro lots as they are called. And it's the remaining which is based on the terroir that I sell in Paris, retail, and in India. So the pandemic sale affected both in France and India for the retail outlets for just a month. Otherwise, by the time of harvest, we pretty much have got all the coffee sold already because we have the buyers from the beginning working on it. They come for the cupping, they do the scoring, and then based on the terroir, they get lost. The real challenge has been that all throughout these climate change issues, pre-pandemic also, these people in Araku have withstood any form of climate attacks. And therefore, I think they've become a model for the right agriculture as well, and which we hope we can replicate in other parts of India. So the pandemic impact has been very limited because of courier. We did not have any impact either at the production or, we pay them even before we harvest. So it's a very complicated model we have because 10,000 farmers, they're out of poverty and they get profits only because of this model we created, and which is they get paid every month, not only at the time of harvest, so that they have cash flows around the year so that there is no middleman coming to the region. Not to mention that, a sizable number of my farmers are people who gave up guns for spades. So it's a different kind of motivation that we have to get them to pay. So I think, I hope I answered the question in terms of did the pandemic affect?
Right.
The answer is
right.
no. Yeah.
Right. That's an amazing impact because as you said, this region in Andhra when you went was known for its, Naxal activity. You said that any vehicle which is white had a risk of being blown up. So from there to becoming a coffee growing region that the world admires is an amazing feat and, a sign of what social entrepreneurship can achieve. But Kaushal, before I go to you, Musthafa, a lot of people want to know when KYC is launching. Has it already been launched in Bangalore and Dubai? What can you tell me?
We already launched in Bangalore. We are launching in other markets soon. Mumbai, Hyderabad, Pune, Delhi, we are launching soon. And we'll be launching in Dubai as well very soon.
So you have a big market in Dubai and US. Does it come from the expat community mainly, the demand for your product?
Dubai business is doing very well for me. In fact, as on today, Dubai business is contributing around 30% of my revenue and 100% of the profits.
Right, right. Kaushal, Musthafa spoke about how businesses actually don't need funding to grow. They actually don't need investors. All they need to identify is their sweet segment in terms of customers. Now, this will actually go against what most entrepreneurs do in Bangalore, all the heavily funded unicorns. What is your own sense, Kaushal? I mean, is it technically possible to do this, especially in the F&B space, or do we depend too much on funding? Do startups depend too much on funding to grow their brands, to scale up their brands?
So, I think there are both sides to this debate. I'll just share my experience. I think we were very profitable before we raised funding. And after funding, we actually didn't become profitable, but we really scaled up. Because what funding did was allowed us the space to make mistakes. Simultaneously, I could run multiple experiments to see what works, what doesn't work. Before that, it was just linear growth. You don't have a lot of leeway to make mistakes. You have to just work with whatever resources you have, how limited it is. So at the end of the day, it just depends on one's personal goals and ambitions. In a sense, if funding helps you accelerate that without at the cost of true customer, I think it's one's choice. You always have a way, like Musthafa did it in his early years, you always have a way to grow. What I also realize is more than the funding, so 50% of our investors are former customers. Whenever we launch a product, they're the first ones to critique us. They are so particular about to an extent, and I think Manoj would agree that when we write product descriptions on the website, if they don't get the same tasting notes, they'll literally write a lengthy email saying they tasted at different steeping times, like different temperatures, different brewing times, but they couldn't get the same note which we had gotten and written about in a tasting note. So that kind of feedback, that kind of attention, I would say is very helpful. We have been fortunate to get that from predominantly folks who have been customers first and then eventually become investors. And sometimes it does help to get you that kind of recognition in the industry. So when I started Teabox, literally everyone laughed at me. They said, tea is a product which you have to taste and smell. And, then only you'll know how good it is. So how can you put it online and assume customers would come and buy? And my answer was very simple that, if coffee can be sold online in the West and wine can be sold online, why is it that we can't sell tea online? I remember that, one of the plantations we wanted to work with, it took me 18 visits to get just one lot of tea from him. But fortunately, after we had some success and, we had some recognition, we had Mr. Tata coming on board, the entire industry turned around and said, we would love to work with you. Having that recognition through some sort of investor also gives you a great, help in many areas, not necessarily only capital.
Right, right. Mustafa, some focused questions coming your way. How you decide on new product categories and innovations? Do you do focus groups? Secondly, with respect to your branding and packaging, is this done in-house? Do you have an external agency? Because people say it's very distinctive, the ID brand. So how do you go about it now that you're also kind of selling globally? Is that a conscious focus? Is Musthafa there?
I think it's hung. I think it's...
Oh, okay. Okay, Manoj, if I can take it to you, how important is the whole branding and packaging part? You said that, in order to sell this to the world, it has to be the world's best coffee. How important is this for local brands? Because as you said, The opportunity is huge in F&B business. There are so many things to discover, and you're very right, because there are so many local brands that we have from for a variety of categories. Be it snacking, be it noodles, be it masala, be it anything else. But how do you really stand out, and how do you go?
So I think it's very important to understand that packing or packaging should not be viewed at the level of just the color and the shape alone. It's also about what goes into the packaging. So there are two aspects. For instance, when we are actually selling coffee, one of the things we did is we only roast after you place the order. It's as fresh as that. So after you place the order, we start roasting. And that too, we ask you what kind of equipment you use to brew. And then based on that, we decide the grind size, then we roast, then we decide whether it's beans or powder, and then we pack. So when you take the importance of packaging to the customer to understand that it has to be that level of freshness, then it demands that level of packaging. So we may need to use nitrogen to keep it fresh. We may need to ensure that it's a biodegradable pack or recyclable. We need to ensure that it also looks good, because especially coffee and tea, I can tell you, is slightly more complicated than idli and dosa, unlike what people think. Because for the kind of quality of coffee that we are talking, it has to be made into a ritual. You don't just gulp it as a takeaway, which is the trend. This is a very high quality coffee, world-class coffee, where you need to pause. We will have our own takeaway coffee in Indira Nagar soon. But the point is, we need to pause. There's a ritual to be created, and that ritual has to be aesthetics. Eventually, we all love beauty. We all love aesthetics. Now, this is all part of the packaging aesthetics. It's not just one color. So one of the things we had to do was, across the world, we saw that coffee packaging was brown and black. So we had to break those color codes. And I remember Mr. Mahindra arguing for a long time initially, saying that, are we really trying to play with this primordial link between color codes and food by not going black and brown? Because if you have seen Araku coffee packaging ours, they are in white background, multicolor leaves, and for different SKUs. And then we have a tin with a cork lid, which is airtight. So to do there, we did a lot of focus group discussions, and we were amazed. Yeah, that's the one. Thank you. We were amazed to know that people across the globe wanted extraordinarily aesthetic packaging. And they said they believe, unlike we said, don't judge a book by the cover, looks like for food, they actually go by the cover. So we realized that there had to be an education on freshness, quality, right up to aesthetics. And all that, frankly, costs money, frankly, costs talent. And we then had to develop the accessories for it. So what I'm trying to say is, packaging is not just wrap. It's about how the entire experience is offered to consumer, including, if I may be allowed to say, you need to package even the quality of human resource that serves to you. I cannot leave my coffee actually in a store somewhere. I don't have that luxury to do it, frankly. So we are trying to create the world's first specialty coffee association coffee school, which will create world-class baristas. And from around the world, they'll come, but I'm hoping India will have some of the world's best baristas thanks to this school. Because we believe when we open our cafe in Bangalore, people should also appreciate packaging to include the fact that the person who is serving is actually a coffeeologist, not a server. So these transitions, I would like us to relook when we create a brand, the word packaging to be beyond foil. In fact, it is the whole chain from soil to foil that should reflect in the packaging. I'll stop here.
Right. I think Musthafa is back. Musthafa, a lot of questions on, how you decide on your new product innovations. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just to add one point to what Manoj said, right? Packaging, I think that's my favorite area as well. Packaging has to have all these things, as he mentioned. But I think there's one more thing that we should consider. Packaging could also deliver some feature, product feature, right? So if you look at the way we have packaged vada batter. We package vada batter in a pouch. When you squeeze the pouch, you get the vada out in the round shape with the perfect hole in the middle. So packaging can also be used to deliver a functionality and to make life easy for end consumer.
Right. That's an amazing insight actually, that you incorporated a product feature into the product. Like your vada, you get the perfect circle with the hole, and
Yes.
Similarly for filter coffee, you can just open the pouch, pour out the decoction, and again use it for perhaps another cup of coffee during the day. How did that product mindset come about?
I think I mentioned that already. All what you need is to identify opportunity in every customer problem. If you look at vada as an example, vada is a great snack. Kids love vada. It goes best with idli and dosa. But then it's one of the most difficult snacks to make at home, unless you're an expert like your grandmother, right? Even if you give you vada batter, you still can't make vada at home because you can't get the shape right for the vada, you can't get the size right for the vada. New generation homemakers like Chandra out here will end up frying fingers while frying the vada, right? And most important,
I make very good vadas, by the way. I make the batter also at home.
And most importantly, we Indians don't eat vada without a hole in the middle. The hole in the middle is the most important part for the vada. Vada without a hole is called bonda. We identified this as an opportunity. We then used common sense and used packaging to solve this problem. And that's why I thought I will add to what Manoj said. Use packaging to deliver a functionality for a consumer.
Right. We are approaching the last.
Some people call it like 3D printing of vada, but we use common sense.
Right. Kaushal, any common sense tips that you can share, like what Manoj and Musthafa said to the packaging and the whole selling part?
So quite opposite to packaging being functional. I think we look at packaging being very experiential. For us, it's all about experience, because again, the category we operate is a very premium category. So it's what we have done is we have tried to map all the customer touch points. So the first moment when you get your box, how does it open? What is the first thing you end up seeing in the packaging? Every tea has its own samples. How does the sample communicate? What does it contain? And most importantly, what we have done is we are all about freshness. So we pack our entire, if you order teas from us, you'll get 100-gram vacuum packs. Even if you want 1 kg, we'll give you 10 packs of 100-gram vacuum packs. The vacuum packing is done at the source in a controlled environment within literally hours, if not a day of production. So that way you get the freshest tea available. So in that sense, our entire packaging, be it in terms of loose leaf, when we launched tea bags, we actually became the first company in the world to launch natural nitrogen flush tea bags. So natural nitrogen is very common in potato chips. If you open any potato chips, it's full with air. That's not really air, that's nitrogen. Very interestingly, no one in the tea industry ever thought of, doing that for tea bags, because tea bags, again, in a small quantity in that area, we push nitrogen, which pushes oxygen out. So we got patent. I mean, very interestingly, we got a patent pending for that. But our entire focus of packaging is two things: freshness and experience. And I think our customers so far, Touchwood, has loved it.
Right. We're out of time, so I'm going to end with I hope we managed to answer most of the questions sent by people, but I just want to end with a rapid fire with our 3 amazing Atmanirbhar entrepreneurs who, embody vocal for local for so many years. Manoj, what is your favorite coffee?
Araku, of course.
The flavor.
So it's been the Grand Reserve, which is top end range, because I call it the coffee for all seasons and all times. It's the only coffee I drink at night and still can get a good sleep.
Okay. What about you, Kaushal?
It's a Darjeeling First Flush or Darjeeling Spring Tea from a very famed plantation called Badam Tam. So when you have when you have just 3 grams of their white teas in your mouth and you take a sip after brewing for 2-3 minutes, you really don't feel like you're drinking tea. It's like a bouquet of flowers and fruits coming in your mouth. literally out of the world experience for me in that sense.
Okay, this is making me hungry for coffee and tea. But Mustapha, among all your range of products, what's your favorite?
ID is paratha. That's the best money can buy for you.
Okay, on that note, thank you all so much. And this webinar has also made me realize we have so much to be proud about. I mean, we keep criticizing so many things in India, but it shows you that if entrepreneurs put their minds to it, one can really make a difference and keep the India flag flying high in countries around the world. So, Manoj, Kaushal, and Mustapha, here's wishing you the very best going forward. And hopefully this webinar will inspire many, many entrepreneurs to also start up local brands, be vocal about it, and then go through. Thank you very much for joining.
Great. Thank you for having me, Chandra.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Chandra.